afternoon, Cross Timbers. Today is Monday, March 31st. I'm Bethann Coldiron, and this is Texan AG TV. Our top stories for today: rodent populations rise in Texas, Kentucky bill targets animal rights groups, an interview with Dr. Turnip Jones, your weekly commodity report, and your local weather. From Texas A&M Agri-life, parts of Texas are seeing a sharp rise in rodents due to drought and other environmental issues plaguing Texas currently. I personally have seen a rise of mice in my barn at home. Some homeowners are being invaded by mice and field rats, which are thriving in the burned-out areas recovering from the wildfires, in part because there are very few predators, Rachel Bauer, Extension Agent in Bastrop County, said. And with the regrowth of vegetation, the rats and mice have had an ample food source and are reproducing quickly. There are some things you can do to deter pests in your home and barn. Keep livestock feed in metal bins in a secure room. Keep your hay off the ground on pallets. Check your buildings for holes and plug any holes in your barn. Put out mice traps, but choose those traps carefully because some will attract dogs and barn cats. Some traps have anticoagulants, and these can have fatal effects for dogs and cats. You might even consider getting a dog or cat that has been trained to hunt mice and rats. Contact your local extension agency to speak to a professional. You can go to erath.agrilife.com for more information. From agweb.com, last Friday, the Kentucky Senate voted to punish animal rights activists who secretly film and infiltrate farms and ranches and then publish videos showing that animal abuse. Some Senate members, however, are not so happy. If a big factory farm is doing something that impacts the environment and public health, we shouldn't be penalizing whistleblowers in those instances, said Democratic Representative Joni Jenkins. The bill would make it a misdemeanor to access a farm under false pretenses and film without the business owner's consent. Violators of the bill could face 90 days in jail and a $250 fine. Last week, I interviewed Dr. Turnip Jones, Assistant Animal Science Professor at Tarleton State University. We had a candid discussion of equine nutrition and important questions that horse owners may have. Today we are sitting down with Dr. Turnip Jones, an Assistant Animal Science Professor here at Tarleton, and we are going to be discussing equine nutrition. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I have grown up around horses, spent a considerable amount of time just doing recreational type of riding. Did have my educational background in animal science from Montana State University, that's where I did my bachelor's, and then I went to Texas A&M for an animal science degree, a master's of science in equine nutrition there. Took some time between my master's and my PhD where I taught. One spot was at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and then I got the opportunity to move to Colorado, work at Colorado State University, and complete my PhD there in animal science, specifically in animal nutrition.
Oh, okay. So today we are discussing equine nutrition, and equine nutrition is very important for those involved in the horse industry. It affects our equine athletes and their health. How can you ensure that your horse is getting the proper nutrition that it needs?
I think just understanding some basic management principles. One, certainly understanding the quality of the feed that you'd be giving horses. They're going to differ in terms of their nutritional needs to other livestock. So they are different in terms of physiology, digestive physiology compared to ruminant animals, dairy cattle, beef cattle. So understanding that first and foremost, that they're going to need a higher quality of feed, and then the different types of feeds that we feed them. Balancing the diet first for forage, and then adding anything additional to the diet in terms of grains is necessary to understand, and then also understanding the body condition scoring system when your horse might be under in their body condition and where they might need some additional nutrients specific to energy, and that every horse is going to be different, so evaluating as an individual, and that the classes of horses, growing horses versus a mature horse that might be out on the pasture, are going to be different as well, and understanding that they have different nutritional needs as well.
Mm-hmm. And when you say different nutritional needs, I have the perfect example of this. I have a 15-year-old gelding that I use for barrels. We just lightly compete. We don't do anything. We're not on the road all the time because I don't have time to do that. But I noticed a few months ago that he kind of looked like he was losing a little bit of weight. And then I had a chiropractor come out, and I asked her, she is a, what am I trying to say? She's also a vet,
Mm-hmm.
and so she's, very knowledgeable of nutrition. And so she said, well, how much protein are you giving him? And I said, well, I try to feed a pretty good feed. I feed Purina Horseman's Edge 12%. She said, 12% is too much for this horse because he is a smaller stature, leaner horse. You want to feed him 10% protein or less. So, I mean, for other horsemen that may have the same kind of questions, how do you differentiate the nutritional needs from the breed, sex, use, and size of your horse?
Sure. No, I think that's a great question. Now, I think you just need to go and for the general horse and out there, certainly having just a general background in nutrition is helpful. But in terms of your question regarding your horse specifically, so obviously he's an aged horse, so he's a mature horse, gelding, but in terms of the performance, obviously he needs probably some nutritional needs, additional energy. And at that, if they are exercising, they do have some protein requirements because there is tissue turnover during exercise, as well as nitrogen that's lost through sweat. So I think that's important to understand that those requirements as well. Now, most horses, mature horses, they don't need a whole lot of protein, and so your vet is correct. Usually we aim for about 8 to 10% if they're just at maintenance, but certainly if they're going to exercise, they do need a little bit more protein back into their diet, and so a 10 to 12% protein is optimal for that age of horse if they are at a light to average type of exercise level. Younger class of horse, growing horses, usually definitely need a higher amount of protein due to the growing tissue, the muscles, and the need of that nutrient during the growth phase, and certainly heavy exercising horses and those animals, growing weanling all the way up to 2-year-old, 3-year-old horses, and especially if they're in training, usually we're feeding them anywhere from 14 to 16% crude protein when we're considering the diet. So I think it's understanding the class of the horse, the nutritional needs that might be imposed on it due to not only its requirement for maintenance, but also growth and performance are important. It sounds like if your horse is losing weight, one thing to keep in mind too is maybe trying to think about what might be causing the weight loss. So has there been an increase in exercise, the quality of the feed stuff that might be provided, if it's not at if it's a later stage in terms of the growth of the hay, might influence the quality of the feed. If he's competing with other horses, if he's group fed, that can be a consideration. And then also teeth. Does he need his teeth floated, anything like that? Because that can certainly influence his ability, or the horse's ability to chew properly.
Yeah, for sure. Because over time, if you don't file their teeth down, they got all those painful hooks, and I wouldn't want to chew.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to chew if my teeth hurt.
Yep.
Now, I have heard from several horsemen that they think these new fancy feeds are they're too complicated. Do you believe that a pelleted feed is better versus just feeding the old-fashioned barley, oats, and different hays?
It has some advantages, and the one advantage is to pelleted feed, and when feed is processed is that it does affect and enhance the digestibility of the grain because you're grinding it down. That's something the horse does not have to do. So with pelleted feeds, especially if it's good quality feed, that there are some advantages to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're ground down to a ground product, and then they go through a process where a binder is added to it with additional nutrients depending on the type of feed it is. And then it comes out through a dye where it's formed into a pellet. And so in terms of grain products, they can be ideal because it's one less, it's broken down to where the horse doesn't have to chew as much, and it makes it more available through the digestive system. One advantage is to pellets is usually they have other nutrients that are added in, so you don't have to worry about trying to supply additional vitamins, minerals. They have that in the pellet already. And then also additionally, if you take a pound of a pelleted feed, you feed it to your horse, he consumes it, he's getting all of the nutrients that are in that pellet, compared to if you had just the whole grain or the loose grain and had to top dress something with it, like add a supplement to it where they could shift through it. Mm-hmm. So with the pelleted feed, there are advantages to that. Mm-hmm. When you're feeding a single grain like barley or corn or oats, you're limited to what the nutrient quality of that specific grain is, so you just have to keep that in mind.
Right. And that actually brings me to my next question. Supplements, that can be a very confusing thing for horse owners. Do you have any suggestion for horse owners so that they don't waste their time and money when buying supplements?
Sure. There is a lot of supplements out on the market. A majority of them, are likely not necessary in the common horse owners, for that horse owner's horse, their diet. Certainly those elite athletes, those animals that are performing on a weekly basis, that are in a high energy level, that you might, certainly considering additional supplements might be necessary. I think commercial feeds now available through the feed companies are very well fortified and balanced. They've come a long ways in doing that. So for the most part, additional supplements are not needed mm-hmm. for most horse owners. Mm-hmm. So I think understanding certainly first the product that is out there. If there is some research to certainly back up the efficacy of the product, that's helpful. But for the most part, additional supplements, if you're feeding a good quality forage, and then also a good commercial type of grain that is formulated for that specific class of horse, additional supplements are usually not needed.
Mm-hmm. What resources are out there for horse owners who have questions about equine nutrition?
I think the best resource is county extension agents. There's one located right here in Erath County in Stephenville. And there's publications available that you can go in and purchase. Texas A&M Agri-life has some excellent publications specific on different classes of horses. They have them for performance animals, performance horses, brood mares, the young growing animal. So certainly that would be the first resource, I think. Is to just go into your local extension agency and pick up some pamphlets. And then certainly, representatives at the feed store are excellent resources as well. So that's another resource that horse owners can seek as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that about wraps up our interview today, and I want to thank you for coming in today and taking time out of your busy schedule to inform our listeners.
Great, thank you for the opportunity.
Now for your weekly commodities report, brought to you by TexasAgriculture.gov. Feeder cattle prices are holding steady with a $10 increase from last week, but futures are showing lower prices. Estimated cattle slaughter for the week is 585,000 head. For the year, cattle slaughter is down 6.8%. Wheat prices are still down, mostly due to the continuing issues in Ukraine. Corn and grain and sorghum prices have unchanged from last Friday, but rain may delay planting in some areas. Now for your weather, brought to you by weather.com. Today's high will be 86. Tomorrow we will have a low of 66 and a high of 86. Wednesday will be a low of 64 and a high of 82 with a 30% chance of rain. Some severe thunderstorms are possible. Thursday will be a low of 51 and a high of 82. Friday will be cooler with a low of 46 and a high of 71. That's all for today's show. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like today's show on YouTube and go to texannews.net to stay up to date on all your news, entertainment, and weather. Today's show was filmed at Tarleton State University in sunny Stephenville, Texas. Katie Gibbs and Bethany Kyle produced today's show. Have a great week, Cross Timbers.